Boom.
Right. Hello everyone. This is the alternative Sunday stream. I'm joined by Matthew Cooper and Thomas Williams for now.
Hiya.
And
Hello.
we're going to be streaming on basic politics for the last week.
Indeed.
Yes. Unfortunately, Captain Swiss is not available today, so I'll be streaming for today for the next few hours. So I'll probably go through some articles and the Sunday paper. But firstly, is there anything you two want to discuss before we go over the papers?
I just want to say that Peter Hitchens in the side chat is immoral.
What is he there?
And I bet he eats the third biscuit.
Oh, I bet he does.
The other point that I just want to make is what everyone here must understand is
Oh,
that
don't.
we are not a person, we are a movement.
Oh,
You must all understand on this Socialist Sunday.
Jesus. Why are you trying? See, Tom has been doing this all week because he knows that whenever Chamchi says this, it proper triggers me. And so Tom has been like proper going at me all week with this. We are not a person, we are a movement nonsense. And I'm just like, oh, it hurts, stop it.
Because it's true.
Yeah. Let's go on that one. Champion could be one of the guests. He's also insulting.
Shout out to James who says, I've got a spanner because I'm literally a Tory, you fucking idiot. in the side chat, which I find quite amusing.
And then the Leon King has said, I can throw a box across the room. That is a movement.
I really like that, actually. That's a good one.
Yeah, well, listen, I go to the toes, and that'll be one bar movement. Especially after I eat a curd. Yeah.
Right. Where are we starting then?
Right, so I'm gonna stop sharing this in the paper momentarily.
Oh. Sunday papers.
I'm sure they'll be exciting.
To be fair, there's an interesting one on the Times this morning. So.
Wait, am I presenting? No, I'm not. There we go.
There we go. You can tell Cam doesn't do this very often.
Yeah. Well, I've been in quite a while. The first one from the Sunday Telegraph. Give staff free food, ministers tell bosses. Second phase, HS2 would never built amidst grilling.
So what about HS2?
Second phase of whatever built. That's interesting. Here's something insight I got. Now, I live right on this route to HS2, about families today. And the recent articles locally came out about that the houses are going to be demolished is tripled to 63 last week on the local news. And since then, there's been a lot of tension about HS2 and lots of questions about it even being feasible. Well, the current route.
I live quite close to the route of HS2. I live in one of the regions that it affects, and it significantly affects a town in South Derbyshire called Long Eaton.
Yeah.
And they've got plans to build a viaduct. Every time a new report comes out about HS2, this viaduct gets higher and higher and higher.
We are having the same thing. I mean, I live literally 2 minutes away from the route. The chance I might even get compensation because of the changing the traffic and the traffic diversions. So I could actually get compensation from the government on it, possible, if it goes ahead. I mean, knocking down houses just to store building materials. Right instead. Yeah, so the building burns across and 2 new housing estates and a canal. And that's where the continuation is. I mean, even discussing building like a station around this area.
Are they going to build a station there?
Yeah. didn't discuss the idea of it. Just calm people down. Also, it's such a mess in South Yorkshire. We still haven't decided where to put the Parkway station. Because the original plan was to put it in a place called Meadow Hall, which is a huge shopping mall. I don't know where that is. And that Meadow was just off the M1, right in between Sheffield and Rotherham.
Oh my
But
god!
they changed the route to the centre of Sheffield. But then, because that's more expensive, because the Sheffield Council lobbied for it. And then people said that's not feasible. So they put it in the Sheffield Midland train station, which is already over capacity. And then some people are saying, no, let's put it in Rotherham. At the old Rotherham Westby train station. There's people are saying, let's put it in the area where I live. And some people are saying, let's put it in Doncaster itself. Or put it in a part of a village called Wells. Oddly enough, there's a village called Wells, which said, let's put it there, and it's moving nowhere. So the whole organisation of HS2 in South York is a mess. It's not surprising that this second phase past Birmingham may not ever go ahead.
What I don't get is why there haven't been any significant talks on trying to integrate it into the actual network. Because you've got a network which is almost at full capacity. You're essentially building an express service from London to the north, Birmingham or wherever it's going to end, which will likely be way more expensive than the standard service. Likely. Now, to be fair, it hasn't been confirmed either way, but it's most likely going to be more expensive. And it's not that much quicker. It's a bit quicker, sure, but it's not that much quicker. So what I don't understand is why they don't, because there are plans out there. There are theories put about out there as to how you could actually build this network, this new HS2 network, and actually integrate it into the existing system. What I'm concerned about is I don't have an ideological opposition to HS2. I just think the way it's being done is wrong. And I think you could integrate it into the main system, which would stop what I think is probably going to happen, where the existing system is just left to degrade and this new system keeps getting built up and built up and built up until eventually the old system, over many, many years, just falls out of use.
Yeah. I know in the route, some parts of it will be integrated in the system. Like the current popular proposal about Sheffield, that they integrate it into Sheffield Midlands train station. But I think HS2 is the worst one they actually going for that position at all. I think what we should do is actually do what we do in Europe. Now, with actually double-decker trains, because overcrowding is a big issue. I know this is going to cost a lot because you look at so many low-lying bridges and tunnels, but on certain routes, we should be looking to do that. And then we should be not scrapping electrification at certain lines, which is the East Midlands train line. Is that between Sheffield and London? What we should be doing is electrifying lines that actually looking to capacity trains. There's always so much you can make trains longer to deal with overcrowding. I think.
What are you saying they should do to the East Midlands train line?
We should electrify it because it's been set on the carpet. Partly because of HS2.
I guess one thing about HS2, and I need to find. There was an article I saw on, was it Railway Technology magazine or something like that, which talks about basically turning the line from a Y shape into an X shape, which means that you could essentially have trains running along the same line, and then integrate into the main network. So you could use HS2 as like a bypass, but still have trains going up and down the network, and utilizing HS2 as well as the existing lines. You don't have to necessarily change trains.
See, that would be a very ideal solution. Because I know our railway system is quite care, our infrastructure is quite well. We should have done a lot of things in the past. We can go far as well in the 1960s on the beach and cut. Well, actually, we'll be opening up what's those lines now.
A lot of those lines don't even exist anymore, like the old Gosport line.
There's the old discussion in America about the old Woodhead line between Sheffield and Manchester. And what the discussion is put a tram train system on there. Like, recently, the tram train in Rotherham is the first tram train in the UK. I think it comes up Germany and then it's quite common. But it's a test I put between the Sheffield Tube and Rotherham. And so far, it's been a success. And there's a huge discussion now to implement the old line of closed. And many lines have been closed and be open. So that's one way we should be looking at changing our way around in the future.
Right.
There is one way of solving all of this.
Go on, Tom.
DD for third runway at Heathrow.
I'm sure that will trigger someone.
But on a more sort of serious note, I think my whole view on HS2 has always been you shouldn't create it when we have a failing rail infrastructure that we have in this country at the moment. Why are we building an HS2 when we have Northern NHS2? Why are we building HS2 when we've still got Northern Pacers?
Yeah, it's like a storm.
You're gonna start triggering Cam in a minute.
Yeah,
this is the day that I trigger everybody.
I was one of the day. It was raining, and it's just going around the corner because right. So when I get going to there's one said by a single line, even though it's shouldn't do because it's population based and rapid use station. When you go to something like the train squeals, basically the wheels of the train, you just weird screens down because it's really tight curve, and it's so awful. That's what ease the bleed. And then at the same time, you'll be chucking down the rain, and the rain be dripping on your head with the wind. And this is acceptable for the 20th century. And what they're trying to do as well, they're trying to delay the basically replace on the faces. They're trying to replace them. They're trying to delay it. Originally, it should be replaced by 29. That's not what happened now. So it's 2020 now. Now it's going to be longer. Now it could be refurbished. So this is the level of the respect of the North England. There's also the idea that of the D train, which is really through a lot of people. Because the idea we can get trains even older than Pacers from London, and replace them with them and refurbish them. The Pacers were made in the late 70s, early 80s. These trains were made in the early 70s from London, and the thing and they actually run slower. The top speed is actually slower than the Pacer train. And people complain that Pace has been too slow, and not as very confident like express trains that get stuck behind them. So this is the level of competence in our railway system, and what we have in other parts of the country. Italy, when they get problems with trains, they get replaced, and it's a really big issue around in North England.
Average Joe's just saying on the side chat that the better idea is HS3 rather than HS2. Connect up the northern cities properly.
And
yes. Go on, Tom.
I was just going to say, Joel Kelly has also said here, see Peter Hitchens on this. This is the issue on which he is left wing. I've gone onto his blog, Hitchens blog on the Mail on Sunday. A general overview of it, from what I'm seeing, and I haven't read it all, just be aware of that. is he favours a medium speed train rather than a high speed train.
Which is kind of what we've already got, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think basically, I mean, I'll have to read through the article to confirm this, but I think what he's in favour of is what I outlined, where forget about HS2, put money into the already existing rail infrastructure and improve it.
I guess I'm not ideologically against new lines, like the idea of HS2. I just think you need to incorporate them into the existing network rather than turning it into a first class, second class network system, which is what I'm afraid we're going to end up with.
Yeah.
The other thing with that then as well is you can actually improve long distance travel. The example I saw was, say, using what would be HS2, but basically networking the track in such a way that you can have high speed going down to Bristol, as well as towards Birmingham. And then you could have much faster routes to the West Country from London, or from Birmingham. Because that's something, like, we're all focused on the North, and the North has been forgotten. I agree with the general sentiment on this stream so far. The North has been forgotten, but also the West Country is massively neglected as far as public transport is concerned, especially when you go anywhere sort of west of Plymouth. Cornwall is just completely decimated by the beaching cuts, and no one's made any effort to try and fix it.
Yeah, and one I remember going actually there. Now, in Devon and Cornwall, it actually also compares to actually went down. Probably one of the only places outside of the North that actually went. Yeah, it's that part of the country is currently ignored. Investment. Right, if I remember during the EU referendum, massive arguments for EU investment in Cornwall and the effects of leaving the EU of that investment we pulled off away from Cornwall. You know, I know there's a huge debate around investment around that.
Joel Kelly makes a point I would generally agree with, which is this is mostly Harold Wilson's fault for the beaching cuts. Yes, I would generally agree with that, but there were some of those cuts which were probably necessary. There were way too many stations. You can have too many. There is such a thing. There were way too many stations in places that just didn't need them. So the beaching cuts went way too far. I would agree with that, but I think some of them were necessary.
I don't know much about Wilson's transport policy, so I can't comment on.
There's a really, really good documentary that Ian Hislop did on the beaching cuts, which was on BBC4 last year. This is how sad I am. I watch things like that. But yeah, it's around online if you can find it.
Right. Okay.
Well, the thing about the trend at the time was people using the car. I mean, in the 50s and 60s, there were explosions in car and shit. People thought the car was the future, almost all respect to transport. And I thought the way was redundant. And that was the thought of the time of people in government. However, that hasn't happened. Actually, very usage increased in the last 20, 30 years. So it is time to rebuild our way in a reasonable way, but how we create new HS2 is definitely the way forward. I don't think it will solve many problems we're facing. And the key issues is actually commute lines. That's where people get the worst complaints.
The one that everyone keeps talking about in this area is the Leicester to Burton line. There's a lot of there's a big push to reopen that stretch of line as well now. Yeah,
the big push around here is to increase the trains to between Rotherham, Sheffield to Lincoln. The big push to increase trains that. There's no fast trains that, like just slow pace trains. There's also been a push to have a railway between Doncaster and Barnsley, which has never been one. Or even the towns of electric trains, there's no actual train link. There's a massive push much to that. But, so we need to be looking at some commuter lines a lot more.
Yes.
And I think they're being neglected in terms of ticket prices, in terms of both the trains, in terms of overcrowding, in terms of how regular trains are. I mean, for example, on the Sheffield Leeds Moorthorpe line, the trains are every hour. And a lot of towns, there's no direct transport to Sheffield. It's always complex. So the large town called Gulthorpe, and the people around there, the local airport, it's always badger on about transporting to Sheffield. The train. Anyway, should we move on for?
Yeah, I think we're going to bore everyone if we keep talking.
It's been going on.
Yeah, we've discussed this to death.
Right. I think I'm going for another paper. Oh, the Daily Star.
Oh God.
We can skip over that because it's not a newspaper.
Yeah.
1,000 hero dogs killed by for fuck's sake.
But
typical quality journalism you get from the Star.
Poor dogs though. But the Sunday Mirror. Grenfell sex scandal.
What?
Working because of the relationship of a vulnerable woman.
Oh, so this is why Mike Hancock all over again then.
So you can read this now. Exclusive. I support working to help Grenfell Tower families has quit over affair with the mourners. A woman who lost friends in the inferno has said to reform parliament. The work was hired by the Tory-run Kensington and Chelsea Council. Labour MP Emerald Court said, "I'm horrified." So basically, the claim is that a worker is basically exposed to a woman. I mean, it could be just some organization. Of course, I got access to the true story in PS7. So what does anyone think about? Should she quit?
It's just wrong to do. It's just wrong to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it's that same relationship between students and pupils, even in schools where people over 18. It's a position of power. It's quite becoming quite relationship.
I don't know what's going on with your mic there, Cam, but you're like, it seems like you're getting fainter and fainter all the time.
Oh, right. I think it's probably me speaking quieter. Right,
yeah, sorry.
So, is there any thoughts on this scandal?
It's just wrong. I've got nothing really else to say on it. Shout out to Joel Kelly, by the way, who's saying he finds the transport discussion deeply exhilarating. I'm not sure if it's being ironic or not.
I mean, I think we can all agree on here that exploiting vulnerable people when you're in a position of power is wrong.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
I think the most interesting headline is on the Times. I don't know if that's the one coming up or what.
Sunday Express is next.
Oh, fuck.
They're saving the best till last by the sounds of things.
Yeah. At least I got the poppy.
Fun, of course. They've got to have the obligatory poppy, of course.
Yeah. 5:30 Funfair Hall. Has anyone truly body hurt a cycle at Bonfire Night Party?
Yeah, I saw that story when it broke yesterday. There was a party in Woking, I think.
You see,
and a funfair carousel collapsed and it hurt a few people.
The problem with these sorts of headlines is, what am I supposed to say when I see them? It's like, okay, that's bad. Yeah, it's like, that's bad. I mean, what am I supposed to conclude? Or
no, but we need reform on carousels. We need reform on carousels. By the way, this is an interesting debate because this has been bothering me for the past couple of days. Average Joe says fireworks dangerous. I totally agree. That now I think personally that we should be banning them for private use.
Oh boy,
I have a reason for this.
Dog.
Where I live is a built-up area. Most people have very tiny little concrete yards. You know, it's all sort of two up, two down type houses around here.
Yeah.
Now, there are a few people where I live who stand on the street corner and set off fireworks. And so they're going over people's houses, and luckily they're landing in people's yards. But the problem is the amount of times it's sort of really, really close call territory. There were some people doing it yesterday, and they were zooming past my back door. And I'm thinking, oh, shit, something's going to hit my house. If you want fireworks, there are so many free or very cheap firework displays you can go to in your community. Why have you got to have your own one?
I want to stop people from doing that. But I think that's because people are very irresponsible with fireworks. My solution is have a fireworks license where actually go for driving to actually go and cause some safety with fireworks. Have to use some safety. And then if you pass that test, then you'll be free to buy fireworks. Just show
I don't necessarily agree. I'm concerned that could still be abused. But I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about it is typically what happens around this time, because we're coming up to Guy Fawkes night, which is tomorrow as well, by the way. Fireworks are typically exploding all over the place, and you do have people who are irresponsible with them, but the complaints I typically see from people on Twitter and in my personal life is they own dogs or cats, and the cats and dogs get petrified of them.
Yeah.
See, in our situation, it's actually the opposite, because I'm shit scared of people setting them off and it might hit my house. My dog doesn't give a shit. My dog's not bothered. If anything, he sort of stands there and looks at them like, isn't that nice? But yeah, I don't know. This sums it up for me. Leon King says in the side chat, my dad once threw a firework into a bonfire. Well, yeah, you're fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's like don't do that, to say the least.
Would you ban sparklers as well, says Average Joe? I don't know, actually. I don't think I would. Because yes, they're dangerous for the person using them and they're dangerous for the people immediately around them. But they don't have the same kind of danger that a firework does, where you can have an awful lot of accidental damage done to people's property. So I'm not as against things like sparklers as I am fireworks.
I mean, I'm not really too sure myself, because when I was younger, I used to be really into fireworks. Not so much anymore, but nah, I don't know on this one. I can see why people want them banned.
Or maybe a case-by-case basis on locality, because say where I used to live in Portsmouth, I would agree with you, you probably wouldn't need to. But where I live now, just because there just isn't the space for them.
Yeah, I think it would have to be... I think the compromise position would be, and this would be giving more powers to councils, which I'm in favour of, allow councils discretion over whether they allow fireworks or not.
Do what they do in the States, where it's a state-by-state or county-by-county thing. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, so for example, if Greater Manchester or Manchester City Council wanted to ban fireworks displays, but Portsmouth City Council didn't, that would be fine.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted by the side chat because I've just seen a couple of very silly ones.
Yeah, he said...
And water you might drown, no. And privatise all pyrotechnics,
nationalise the Darwin Awards.
I like that. I can't lie. That's kind of funny.
That is quite funny, to be fair. Nationalise the Darwin Awards.
My issue with fireworks isn't necessarily idiots hurting themselves. That's not what I'm concerned about. My concern is the amount of times you see stories about fireworks hitting people's roofs and things. Or it's things like that that bother me. So if you're irresponsible and you get hurt, that's your own fault.
Yeah.
No, okay, you know, obviously I don't want people to get hurt, but if it's on you at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're taught basic firework safety every single year when you're in secondary school, so you should know the point.
So my concern is more the unintended consequences of fireworks to other people that aren't involved in it. Average Joe says, I wouldn't ban them altogether, really hard to enforce. Yeah, it is, but there's plenty of things we ban in this country that are hard to enforce bans on. So,
Yeah.
and again, it's not like you have no access to them. Full stop. You can go to a firework display. Like in my city, there are at least 6 or 7 of them in various local parks across the city. There's no reason you can't go to a firework display, and most of them are free.
Yeah, I do see the point.
I wouldn't bomb. I would.
I mean, I'm really split on the issue as a whole. I understand both points of view.
I don't think we should ban it. I think we should just license it. Actually, have people,
It's a fair argument. It's a fair argument.
have people taught how to use them responsibly. There's also, I think a restriction on certain built-up areas maybe reasonable to do as well. And like I said before, it could be sort of local council. Local council, right? Most of the councils are very close to the terrace houses. It's not much space here. It's quite reasonable to do fireworks. But then down the road, it could be in some suburbs where houses are fall apart. It could be more reasonable to have them there. That may be a bit of a... I can see where you're getting. I don't think we should ban them.
I can see this is why I'm just going to be outnumbered on, which is it's all good. But yeah, I don't know. I just to be fair, it's a thing that I've only really been concerned about in the past couple of years since I've lived here, because it never was a concern when I used to live out in the sticks, because less people had them and there were bigger spaces for people to set them off. So it wasn't so much of an issue. It's more just because I live in a very built up area and because everybody is so crammed in together, and the likelihood of accidents just goes up and up and up. The more people you have on top of each other like that.
Yeah. So should we move on from?
Indeed.
So go with the Observer.
Oh, hello.
Arron Banks faces new claim of misleading MPs over Brexit. Our favourite subject.
Oh, good old Arron Banks.
Yeah.
Can't help himself. There's a police investigation out on him. Good. Hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it. I don't understand this push to not have him speak on MAR this morning. Oh, but he might jeopardize the case. No, he won't, because there's nothing he can say that can jeopardize the case.
Yeah. I mean,
so I don't understand why there's all this pushback.
It should be free to defend himself, and he has. It's observed on social media. He's been at it with Andrew Neil. We're honouring him. There's been allegations for Arron Banks almost even for the referendum of corruption and misuse of funds with political campaigns. So this is not so too surprising to come to this. There's also reports that can go and meet Russian and ambassadors or different sources that. My concern is, particularly people on social media, so-called, I'm going to say, FDPs, using to say the referendum is invalid. Ignore people who were completely misled by criminals. And then the issue with this is that that's not where people will leave. Not because they're misled or because they're really not corrupt. And it's a very snobbish attitude. That if we get a referendum blogging or video, that's any like commits this crime is obviously the criminal, and Brexit is a criminal exercise. It's ludicrous. It's very shallow to say we're not going to vote where you want it. To go out and say it's almost based on almost criminal activity. It's counterproductive on the motivator. and I very despise it.
I did see. Now, forgive me if this is fake news, but I also did see something about Stephen Kinnock being referred. So I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I saw something about Stephen Kinnock being referred because of EU money.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
So I noticed that hasn't garnered any press.
Yeah.
Now, if it is fake news, then fair enough. I can understand why it hasn't garnered any press.
No, I saw quite a bit on Stephen Kinnock. There's a few people in the campaign as well. But I read a bit about George Osborne as well. So,
Aaron Banks, it is the thing. Aaron Banks is a really slippery bastard, and I would not be surprised if he has done something illegal. He's the type of guy who would. Let's be completely clear about this. So, if he's done something illegal, he's done something illegal. Whether you should void the Brexit vote over that's just preposterous. That's entirely ridiculous, because here's the thing. Even if he was persuasive and he managed to persuade a few thousand people, you've got to convince the population that he managed to convince 4% of the public.
Yeah.
More than he would have done otherwise.
I don't think it would. I'm an example of one of these figures that people are very sort of hysterical about because he's behind the scenes and we don't know what he's doing. Sort of arm back behind Nigel Farage. There's that sort of man behind the scenes idea without that. He's obviously pulling the strings. Which I don't think it's nowhere near as picture that it is. Well, I'm not a fan of him. I think it's probably
you're coming through really poorly, Cam.
Sorry. It's all right.
To read through the comments, Leon King has been saying that we should cancel Brexit over this.
I feel like he's trolling.
Have some type of a people's vote.
I genuinely think he's trolling.
No, he's not.
He's not. He is serious.
Oh, is he a hardcore?
Yeah, he's a Liberal Democrat and a hardcore Remainer.
Oh, God. Okay.
He's not joking when he says that. He said it before on Twitter's streams that Brexit should be cancelled.
I mean, in my opinion, well, actually, some of the Brexit was austerity. And more we than doing this, that idea comes from both. There's a study from the University of Warwick that said that 10% swing in the Brexit vote towards Leave was from austerity. The more read on that, the more likely that is, rather than these shaded millionaires influencing behind the scenes. So it should be mitigated. It should be tried fairly. And what was the result? Probably true because Aaron Banks is a very shady figure.
There's an interesting one here from. There's a couple here. Leon King says, "I love how people don't talk about the positives of Brexit. There aren't any." Well, I disagree, and I voted Remain. So there's that. Bill Kelly says,
just as a general sort of viewpoint, I have to agree with him on that, even if I don't agree with on most things. I don't really see any positives to Brexit, and I don't think it should be cancelled because I'm fundamentally first and foremost a Democrat, but there isn't anything positive that's going to come of it, in my view.
I think we changed a couple of positive things. I mean, there's positive to almost every movement in the act. But how things are going right now, I don't think we'll see many positives. Because the uncertainty of body and whatever it's going to get is the worst possible deal we can get. Checkers.
Joel Kelly, to read out some of his comments, has said, the discipline of political science is not precise enough to say that it was the campaign which swung the vote. He's correct on that front as someone who's doing a political science degree. Call for a second referendum if you want, but don't use Soviet-sounding euphemisms like a people's vote. Bionic Bert says, keep voting until you get the right result. John Cooper says, yeah, basically that's what a people's vote is. And John Cooper says, best we can do is work out a deal. Yeah, I agree with that.
Now, to your point and Leon King's point about no one talks about the positives of Brexit. Okay, if you generally support Corbyn's thought process of trying to nationalize more companies, the EU does make that a lot more difficult because of the state aid rules. So if you're out of the EU, it makes life a lot easier. Admittedly, and again, full disclaimer, I voted Remain. I've always been a bit Eurosceptic, but I voted Remain purely because I thought that extracting ourselves from the EU was going to be exceedingly difficult and not worth the hassle. And I was pushing for a sort of Varoufakis style reform of the EU.
Yeah, I was. That's what I'm in favour of.
Now, to say that there are no positives in leaving is just as ridiculous as saying the sky is going to be ever so much bluer when we've left. I think it's incredibly sort of naive thought process.
I mean, the thing about it is I just don't see any benefits of it. I cannot think of any. As for the nationalisation bit, yes, it's more difficult, but it's not impossible. Countries like Germany, in fact, most of Western Europe for that matter, have nationalised industry. And the
Most of the
European
nationalised
Union...
industry in Western Europe came before the European Union brought in state aid laws, so they can't be applied retroactively. Oh, hello. Cam's got noises in his background.
Yeah, it's typical for Cameron.
But no, that's why a lot of Western Europe has so many nationalised industry.
I think also another thing about this as well is on that point, Holland, the Dutch government is thinking about taking their top-up fee system and turning it into a national healthcare service, which means they've had
to close 2 hospitals this year and basically abandon a bunch of patients. They have basically an Obamacare style system, and it's completely falling on its ass.
Yeah, because that's typically what happens with any form of private involvement. Right. But the EU...
I think Cam's got something.
I was going to say, I'm going to leave you for like 5 minutes while I eat. So
all right.
All right, we'll deal with the side chat on this then. The final point I was going to make to wrap it up is Holland is doing this, and the Dutch and the EU has no problem with the Dutch government doing this.
How much of that is because of the fact that basically it's falling over anyway? If they don't do it, then they won't have a health sector. Does that make sense? Like, there's a part of me that wonder, because there is no reason we have to nationalize the railways in this country. Our railway system, although we have problems with it, it does work. Trying to justify that to the EU would be very difficult. Now, I can see Holland, the Netherlands, playing it up as we have to do this as a sort of bail out the banks type motion, where if we don't do it, it's going to fall down. I can't see Labour making that case very well with things like the railways or Royal Mail or water or energy.
On to the overall point of the whole, is there any benefits of Brexit? Leon King has asked, can you name one as a benefit of Brexit?
the lack of state aid control.
Well, there you go, Leon. That's your answer. Bionic Bert has said, I'm prepared for the worst, so I'm ready for anything. I think that's what you should just do as a general rule overall, I think. The Average Joe has said, the EU is pushing EU countries to open up nationalised industries to the free market. Like Macron is pushing reforms to nationalise the train companies.
Nationalised train companies.
Yeah, nationalised train companies.
Typo. Yeah.
Yeah, typo. Yeah, you do have a point there, but I would say that's more Macron rather than the European Union.
To be fair, Macron and the European Union tend to have the same kind of thought process because they are both federalist entities. Macron wants more EU integration. Him and Juncker are essentially the same beast with 2 different heads, as it were.
Yeah, another thing as well, to sort of back up his point is, when Southern Europe, most of those countries joined the EU via the IMF encouraged them to deindustrialise and become service sector economies. So while that isn't nationalised industry being privatised, it is an example of them promoting supply side Washington consensus economics.
Bill Kelly, interesting point.
Yeah, Joel Kelly has said there are good things about Brexit, getting out of the European arrest warrant and the common external tariff and the
Disagree
EU
with
army.
the arrest warrant part of that, but the external tariff is fair. Carry on.
The EU army, etc. However, leaving the single market is a big sacrifice. The European arrest warrant is particularly bad.
Now, Joel, can you please explain why the European arrest warrant is so bad? Because I don't see that. I don't see that as a bad thing. If anything, I think it's a good thing. It means that law enforcement can actually work across borders.
I think with the common external tariff, I do agree with him there. And the European army, well, this is a sort of view that I have on the EU army. I'm not really in favour of defence pacts because we end up with situations like if Hungary gets invaded, then the US has to join in and defend them. It's like, why? I'm sorry, but why can't the Hungarians defend themselves rather than us having to defend them?
As far as EU army stuff goes, do you remember when everyone used to say that was a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, I do remember. I mean, it's not really a conspiracy theory. It is happening, but I would argue that, ironically, Brexit has sped up the process of an EU army because we've always been a barrier to reform within the EU, and because we're not there anymore, we can't block it. Because something like the EU army needs all 28 member states to get passed.
Well, we're still there, and it's still proceeding at quite an alarming rate. I know we're leaving, but we're still there until March, and we still have a vote, and it's proceeding. We're not blocking it that hard, clearly.
I think the reason probably for that is because we're just not going to be bothered getting involved in the EU stuff anymore. I think if we were still there, we would probably not be in favour of it. I think.
Angels, come join us because we need some ardent Remainer comments.
We need like, oh look, there is Angels.
Yeah. That's why I said that, because I see her in the
Vohan has said Brexit, as in Rexit. Angel says good afternoon all. Hello, Angels. And then Joel Kelly has said, under normal extradition treaties, the foreign court has provided a decent prima facie case to a British court before the extradition is approved, and if the court can strike down the extradition, I
think he's going to continue it.
Yeah, I think he's going to continue it a bit more. But I think his overall point is that the court can strike down extraditions. I think that's what he's basically saying.
Average Joe makes a good point. Can you compare the EU army to the UN army? It's slightly different because I think the EU army is a bit more. There's more of a territorial element there, whereas the UN army there isn't one. And by that, I mean, I'm assuming you mean UN peacekeepers. There isn't one as much.
Also, if the European army was to be created, it would basically be NATO without the United States. It would function as a defense. It would function as a defense pact rather than what the UN does, where if something terrible is going on in the world, such as the Rwandan genocide, then they have to sort of intervene to stop it. Now, they didn't, because there's a difference between what happens in practice and what happens in reality, but that's what they should do in theory.
Leon, can you please explain why the tariff is a good thing? Simply saying it doesn't make it a good thing. Can you explain why it isn't? Why it is a good thing? Sorry.
Yeah, it's like it's not a particularly good thing at all because all it's doing, and this is a problem with trade blocks as a whole, is within the trade block you've got free trade, but outside the trade block you've got protectionism. And that forces other countries that want to trade with the EU to try and negotiate either to get rid of the tariff or to make it as low as possible. And considering that the EU, if its trade deal with Japan is successful, will have 1/3 of the world's GDP located within it, lots of countries are going to want to do a lot of trade with the EU.
Right, I'm back.
So, no, I don't think the common external tariff is a good thing at all. I think it's quite bad. It's not. It's especially bad if you're a person who's in favour of free trade. As for Joel Kelly's point, to add on to that, he basically said they don't agree with the law. This is eroded by the EAW. Many countries under the EAW have judiciaries that the EU Commission acknowledge are corrupt, such as Hungary, Poland, Romania, etc.
But the EU is trying to fix those judiciaries with things like the Article 7 procedure against Hungary. So, yes, they acknowledge they're corrupt, but they're also trying to fix it. I would say that the European arrest warrant clearly isn't that effective in quite the way that Joel Kelly's making it out to be, purely because look at what happened to Puigdemont. Carles Puigdemont, the Catalan separatist leader, managed to stay in Belgium unhindered. So, you know, it's one of those things. You have to have a law in your country that is equivalent to a law in another country for the European arrest warrant to take effect.
Does anybody remember Asher King?
No.
Oh, right. The kid who had the brain tumor.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
Yeah, it was a famous story a few years back. And the reason why I bring it up is because what had happened with that case is his parents took him from the hospital and sent him to the Czech Republic because the Czech Republic had an experimental procedure which was highly likely to get rid of his tumor. Doctors didn't approve him to go there, so the parents took him to the Czech Republic, and a European arrest warrant was issued for them, even though the only thing that they were doing was trying to make their sick son a lot better.
But now, what was the law that they used in that scenario? Because, again, you have to have equivalent law in the country that you're being arrested in for the EAW to work effectively.
I'm not sure. I know they didn't get to the Czech Republic. They went to another European country, so I think they both had the same sort of law going on. But it did work in that case, and I think that's an example of where it can be morally wrong. And it can
but then extradition can also work in that scenario. I mean, like, okay, with the case of Carles Puigdemont, the Spanish were trying to get him done on charges of sedition, which Belgium didn't have. So that's why Puigdemont went to Belgium. So again, with extradition, the case that Joel was making, how you can appeal extradition cases through the courts and stuff. Yeah, you can, but also if you know that you've committed a crime in one country and you know that crime is not a crime in another country, with the EAW, you can go to that country and nothing will happen to you.
Right.
So
as for Joe's point, he said proton beam therapy. Yes, it was proton beam therapy.
Oh, Angel says that we're not fulfilling the gender quota.
Well, I'm
now identify as female, so we feel sorry. So it's completely fine. Calm down. I'm gonna move on to the next paper, which is the Sunday People.
Oh yeah, I always forget that exists. I always forget that exists.
But all the articles are interesting. Your gamma of lives and got Tory MPs attempt to save casino machines that bring misery to thousands. Ban cashing machines, and there's Philip Davies.
Oh yeah, I know about these things.
He's the poor bookie MP.
By the way, Philip Davies
is a through and through cunt.
There was a thing I heard about him recently because Profile, the BBC program Profile, did an episode on Esther McVey, and they spoke to Philip Davies about why Philip Davies is with Esther McVey, and can you describe the best thing about Esther McVey? And I'm not joking. The thing he said was the way she cooks chips. Apparently, that's the thing that Philip Davies likes the most about Esther McVey is the way she cooks chips.
Oh, what? Yeah. We talk. You know what? There's loads of talk within the Labour Party about deselecting Blairite MPs. I've always been in favour of party primaries for everyone, like they do in the United States.
I totally agree with this.
This cunt is a perfect example of why we need that to be the case. This man.
I can imagine most Tory members don't like Philip Davies, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, I know. He's the exception. I mean, he is a uniquely cancerous figure within the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
I've said often that Philip Davies is one of the worst, if not the worst, MP in the whole of the Parliament. And things like this just further add on to that belief.
Yeah, I think there is Equality Party. Man, purposely running the seat last election.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, in Shipford, which was not far from where I live. No.
I remember the short amount
He's-
of time there was on Left Wing Twitter when everybody thought he lost his seat. The joy that everybody felt when that happened, and then sadly we found out he held the
What?
seat.
He's on the he's the marginal, so he probably would lose it.
To be fair, I do want to know how he keeps.
Because there are some constituencies in this country where if you got a cabbage and you stuck a blue rosette on it, they would vote for it.
But he's not in a safe Tory seat. This is an odd thing, but in West York, there's a handful of Tory seats, right? No abortion. And since probably the Blair, they're always going to the Conservatives by a handful of votes. It wouldn't take much to get rid of it.
No, I hope to God he loses it next time, and I think he will because his majority is about 4,600 votes. So, yeah. But in terms of it being a safe Tory seat, it's basically been that way since 2010. It's only now that it's been reduced to a marginal.
Joel Kelly says Sargon likes him, so that must be a bad sign.
Yeah,
the reason
it is.
Sargon likes it is the video person.
Why am I not surprised by that?
No, it's because of his campaign against feminism.
Yeah,
in Parliament, and when he called feminist zealots.
I think Sargon is the type of person who, if Bolsonaro came out as an he is an anti-feminist, but if he was more overt in his anti-feminism, I think he would get the full backing of Sargon of the cast.
No, to be fair, I think there are limits with Sargon. Even Sargon, I don't think Sargon would openly endorse Bolsonaro. I think there are limits to Sargon.
Well, the thing about him is Bolsonaro stole his catchphrase. I wouldn't even rape you, because he said that basically to a congresswoman and said she was not worthy of rape.
Yeah.
So they're actually best buds, I think.
Nah, I do. To be fair to Sargon, I do think there are limits to his depravity.
I mean, I can't think of a authoritarian right winger he has not endorsed.
Here's a good barometer. Has he ever endorsed Duterte? I don't think he has he?
Not that I'm aware of.
There you go. There's his limit. The Duterte barometer is Sargon.
But the bar at that point is, I mean, okay, you haven't endorsed the mass murdering dictator in the Philippines. Congratulations.
I mean, I know it's not much of a yardstick, but it is one.
Right, I'll move on to the next.
Probably says it's all about the context. No, it's not all about the context. That's not okay.
I also don't see how she was not worthy of rape. I don't understand how that makes it any better.
How is that okay in or out of context? It just isn't. It's not okay.
Oh, here we go. The bloody
yeah, and then
Leon King fair point as well. Yeah, you're right, Leon. And I live in.
Yeah, but to be fair, in Twickenham, you could also put a cabbage with a yellow rosette, and it would win.
No, it wouldn't, because it didn't in 2010.
Well, yeah, but it did all the other times.
Oh, not 2015. Sorry, it didn't in 2015.
Joel Kelly also says Sargon hasn't endorsed Duterte because Sargon approves of drug legalization. Immoral.
Yeah, that's drug legalization. See, this is where Sargon's right. Drug legalization is fine.
Well, in that case, I think Sargon is experiencing stopped clock.
Yeah.
Leon King says message retracted, except he doesn't because he deleted a message. Bubbleviz says it's okay with me. No, it's not okay. It's sick and wrong.
So, I'm looking at it now on Daily Mail Sunday. As we know from the Daily Mail, the most important thing
until last night. You can.
Yeah, the most important thing is Prince Charles' intimate photo album.
No one cares. No one gives a fuck.
According to the most people do care. Anyway, High Street made official complaint about outstanding radio for a Bush report. Limited through it at the most biased BBC bulletin in history. And what's this about? Quite interesting. Zoom in on the text.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Theresa May has gone to war with the BBC with the Tory party publicly attacking the corporation for finding outstanding political bias in the budget coverage. Down Street has made a furious complaint to the broadcaster. After it, that it's a radio of our bulletin who claims that from a left-wing think tank that the measures unveiled by the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, was made to benefit the rich. One aide described the report on Tuesday program as the most biased bulletin in history. Throughout erupted after the flagship news targeted research by the Resolution Foundation, without reviewing its director, Thorsten Bell, who was the head of policy for the former leader, Ed Miliband, Labour leader Ed Miliband. The Serenum Bulletin declared an independent analysis of the budget and said despite moves to end austerity when it ends.
So, okay. I have a couple of things to say about the BBC. There was a very interesting interview done on the BBC. It was Nick Robinson's podcast, and I can already hear the side chat starting to wire up its fingers for furious.
Tory shield.
But no, Nick Robinson did an interview on his Political Thinking podcast with John McDonnell. It was probably one of the fairest interviews I think I've heard with John McDonnell in a very long time, to the point where John McDonnell was outlining his economic policy, and Nick Robinson said, this is basically Christian democratic policy. So Nick Robinson, who everyone often shouts about being a Tory shill, says that John McDonnell economic policy is essentially German Christian democratic policy. So are we still gonna scream and shout and holler that the BBC is a right-wing biased entity when it says that John McDonnell, who calls himself a Marxist, is advocating Christian democratic policy in this country?
Nah, he's still a Tory shitstain to me.
Well, with the BBC, I do think most of them do attempt to be actually impartial. But I think generally the BBC actually leans towards the political centre. And then social justice. The
BBC is socially liberal and
economically conservative.
Economically centrist / conservative.
Yeah. And this is why it gets more sense. And there are no people in there with right-wing opinions. And you can see the bias. You can look at Newsnight, you can look at Andrew Neil, look at Dimwit. There are people that do show the bias. This is why it gets so much spit. But the BBC itself does try to be impartial. You notice that. And you can see the bias in Laura Kuenssberg. Well,
see, I would say Laura Kuenssberg, everyone accuses her of being conservative. I would say Laura Kuenssberg is essentially a journalistic vulture. She's very happy if something's going wrong, and she will shout and scream and holler about it as much as she can. And I don't think that matters what side of the political spectrum that happens on. She's very happy to circle.
I would agree. Now, from what I see of Laura Kuenssberg, I get the interpretation she's I think she probably votes for them.
She probably does.
I saw the interpretation that she's them.
I think in a way, actually, because if you listen to her on Brexit Cast, because I do, because I'm sad enough, and she does her sort of long form reporting about Brexit, I think she actually might be one of the few Lib Dem leavers. I think she is secretly a leaver. Honestly.
Sometimes you do get that from her. You might be slightly mistaken, but she could be a civilian leader. I mean, is it Lord Afros polls saying that is it about 25% of the Dem voters in 2015 that will leave? So it could be very possible.
Yeah, I wonder if she is a secret Lib Dem leaver. Peter Hitchens in the side chat. We need a proper Conservative Party that hates gays and women.
That's Stephen.
No, it's you, Stephen. We know it's you. Laura Koonsberg is absolutely immoral.
But
Why that Peter Hitchens account tickles me so much? It really does.
I mean, they always see academic agent side shots.
Oh, it always makes me laugh.
I'll move on to the Independent.
You really are keeping this teasing everyone with it now.
Two main articles. Inside the camp where Colombian rebel fighters learn how to be tour guides. And there's fresh codes inquiry on bullying by politicians. An investigation to look at complaints against MPs and peers. A new Westminster inquiry into the allegations of intimidation, harassment by MPs and press is set to be bigger and more explosive than the landmark Cox report Independent understands. The Commons leader, Angela Leadsom, is poised to begin a probe into conflicts from aides employed directly by politicians and are expected to draw hundreds of allegations. Details of a new inquiry are due to emerge tomorrow. The MPs guaranteed a bit. The Cox bit on the Cox report findings.
These bullying allegations, they've been going around for a while. I remember the Newsnight piece with the guy who worked for the Undersecretary to the Speaker. And I think there's a lot of credibility to them. I can believe that Berco's a bastard. I can believe that a lot of the aides that work for him are not particularly very nice. I think my local MP, Margaret Beckett, made a big mistake in saying that even if it's true, he should stay for Brexit. But I do think we need to follow process. We shouldn't be just kicking people out because we suspect this, that, the other thing.
Yeah.
If it's true, fine. If you can prove it, fine. If you can't, then I don't know. Just he say I do think we need to be putting more pressure on Bercow because he has said he would only stay for 9 years. He was on record saying that, and he's overstayed his initial 9-year term. You could make the argument that he's staying on to sort out Brexit and make sure that Brexit goes smoothly. But the argument that he's the only person qualified to do that doesn't hold much sway for me, considering that Lindsay Hoyle, who is the Deputy Speaker, has been there just as long and is just as experienced, and I would say would be just as good of a speaker.
Yeah, I completely agree. But there's quite a couple of names actually being thrown around, and the ones that are coming up is Jacob Rees-Mogg as a favourite to become next speaker, which will be quite interesting. But this bullying allegation is ongoing for over a year. And there's a very interesting interview a few months ago. Or it was on Daily Politics with both Jess Phillips and Jacob Rees-Mogg. And both put together and agree that this boy is accepted. And what's quite interesting is that Jacob Rees-Mogg called Jess Phillips his friend and said she's out of right to be bullied. And so this idea, I think most politicians can't acknowledge them. So it'd be interesting to see how things go. Yeah.
Peter Hitchens has been quite active in the chat.
Stephen and not Steve Hayes, not George Hayes.
Yeah, I'll read out. He said, "I once argued with Chris Bryan over the Labour Party ruining our ethno-culture. The Labour Party flooded this country with Polish bombers. Well, instantly, Peter, you've gotten the entire of Central Portsmouth to vote for you based on that." And then Leon King asks, "Peter, can those plumbers do the job? He says, "No, only British people can fix my pipes. You've definitely got the entirety of central Portsmouth now." John Burko is a Remainer BBC plant. My brother was a loony neocon trot.
Okay, someone did ask a legit question further up on the side chat, and I forget who it was, but about why do the Tories hate John Burko?
Joel Kelly.
Joel Kelly. It's pretty obvious. John Burko has made it his mission to make sure that backbenchers can ask as many questions of the government as possible. The government don't like this. Also, John Burko has a very, very weird history. The Monday Club, which is a ultra Tory, ultra right-wing Tory group in Parliament. There were people within the Monday Club who used to say that John Burko was a bit too right-wing for them. That was when he first joined Parliament. He since married a Labour activist and has drifted further and further and further left in his politics as time has gone on. Now, obviously, as he's now Speaker, we don't know where his politics are now. I would assume he's still a Conservative because he's still in the Tory party officially. But I'd be very interested to see what he does once he's no longer Speaker. Because I suspect he is on the left of the Tory party, if not no longer a Tory.
I'd argue that a lot of what he stands for is standard Lib Dem stuff.
Yeah, he's moderated so much in the space of about 20 odd years. It's quite interesting to watch his journey in politics.
It's interesting to watch someone go from a fascist to a liberal.
Mm.
And Peter Hitchens has said the Monday Club is left wing.
Oh dear.
Joel Kelly says whipped. Joel Kelly, that is absolutely immoral.
That's just absolutely immoral at the end of the day.
Oh dear.
Right. So
What I'd like to ask as well, just quickly, why do the BBC insist on including the Independent in the paper review when it's no longer a paper?
I'd have no clue.
Because that in that case, there's plenty of arguments for including things like BuzzFeed and Unheard and a bunch of these other websites as papers in the paper review.
I guess their argument would be, well, it used to be a paper, so therefore we're going to cover it.
yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then that's put things like the Canary in.
God,
It was rapidly
They
going
would
for
say
flowers.
that was never a newspaper, so...
Yeah.
if you're going to include the Canary, you need to include Bulldog as well.
Look, you need to include.
Or go even further than that. Include. I know this is American, but include the Drudge Report.
Oh Jesus!
Then they could Breitbart
The Morning
and
Star.
Westmonster.
Oh,
Fucking Westmonster. The far right, ultra conservative, ultra Brexit paper, which every single hard Brexiter retweets fake news articles from.
Oh, and Dennis Skinner. Dennis Skinner's weirdly obsessed with Westmonster. He always seems to be on there.
Oh,
All the fucking newspaper, as I said, it's a hard right, ultra conservative, ultra Brexit newspaper, quote unquote.
the thing about the Westmonster, you do like to get people on the left who are skeptical. I've seen this trend that they get people like Dennis Skinner, Galloway, John Knowles, people generally who's on the left. I've seen that pattern occasionally.
Peter Hitchens says include his Sunday column.
We'll have to take into consideration. But the next paper's from the Sunday Times.
Hey!
And as you can see, they're advertising the best pies ever. But most important, May's secret Brexit deal. Breakthrough Irish border. As PM, woos Tory rebels. How does Theresa May woo people? That's all I want to know.
I'm really interested in this story because there were a lot of rumours going around. I think it was Thursday/Friday morning that May would have a deal by Tuesday. Now it sounds like the Sunday Times has managed to get a hold of this deal early. This is really interesting if they've got this right. But we have to add the caveat: it's leaked, and it might not be accurate. Because I don't want to get my hopes up, but I like the look of this deal. I know that Cam probably hates it.
Yeah.
But I quite like the look of this deal. It's better than no deal. Well, fucking anything's better than no deal. But you know what? If we've got some progress, I'm happy. I'm happy. So that's where I'm at with it. But again, I don't want to be too optimistic because it could be a misleading leak. Things could fall through last minute. We don't know. So I'm optimistic, but I don't want to be too optimistic.
Yeah. What I'm reading on this is Checkers with a customs unit. That's what I've got. Which will basically guarantee the border of Northern Ireland. So, as we all know, we do have a border. So this will change on that front. Okay. So, it's quite interesting. I'm certain it will back requirements. Completely certain. Well, I've seen reports recently of my great MP Callum Flint organising a Republican Labour to vote for the deal. And apparently, she's leading about 40 MPs.
Well, wasn't that the males number, 40 MPs?
And I think it is the males number.
Because they were saying anything between 45 and 30.
Yeah, I've heard there's quite a few people for it. It's mainly Labour MPs and Leave constituencies that are doing it. So Flint's one of them. Heard something about Sarah Champion as well being the vote spot on this.
So, okay. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This Labour fallacy, and I'm saying this as a Labour member, so feel free to report me to whatever committee you want. This Labour fallacy, I agree with Barry Gardner on this, that we are going to get an election if we vote down the deal, and we can somehow fix everything and end up with a decent deal that will meet all the 6 tests by the time we leave. It is a fallacy. It's a complete fallacy. Now, if you do not want no deal, for once, Gove is correct. Take what you can and alter when you get out. It's the only way we're ever going to get any kind of decent Brexit deal. Take what you can get and then try and fix it on the way out. The EU is for turning. The EU is for moving. We've seen this. If this leak is correct in the Sunday Times, it's evidence that the EU is for turning because they pretty wholeheartedly said no to any of this quite recently. Because in that leak in the Sunday Times, it actually says that Britain, not the UK, but Britain, as in the island of Britain, would be given some flexibility on trade, but be allowed to stay within the customs union. That was very much a no from the EU not very long ago. So we'll see where we get with this. But if you vote down Chequers, you are voting for no deal. If you try and persuade yourself that somehow voting down a deal means that you will not get no deal and you will somehow get a better deal, I want to know what drugs you're on. Because we are leaving on March the 29th. It is very unlikely we will get an Article 50 extension this close to the date of leaving, because you have to get approval from every other European state. It's not just something the Commission can do out of hand. So if you want a Brexit deal, if you don't want a WTO Brexit, you're going to have to swallow Chequers, as horrible as it is. And I am not a fan of Chequers, but it's a damn sight better than a WTO Brexit. And as I keep saying, we do not know if the WTO is sustainable at this point, because the WTO is on its knees because of the US, because the US is refusing to appoint its contingent of representatives to the WTO. And so the WTO can't actually do anything.
But the point that you're missing out, Matthew, is if we go on WTO, we've got our country back.
Oh dear.
And Joel,
Here comes
on-
the like socialist
on
meme that is Thomas Williams.
Joel Kelly has said, to just read through the comments, they've been discussing Poland and the Law and Justice Party, but
Can I
Joel
just
Kelly,
read out the Peter Hitchens one? Which was it Joel Kelly or Peter Hitchens that said, "I have yet to be convinced that the Independent was ever a newspaper," and then Peter Hitchens said it was a trot pamphlet he used to hand out, which made me chuckle a little bit.
yeah, basically that's what happens there. Joel Kelly has said, "Norway or no way." That's an excellent slogan, by the way. And then you've had Peter Hitchens basically saying Chequers is immoral. Abby Cat wants a WTO Brexit. Indeed, she does. Because when we have a WTO Brexit, it's going to be the land of milk and honey with unicorns shitting out rainbows. And Joel Kelly has said EFTA is still possible.
Yes, we have to convince the Conservative Party of that, and I don't think they would take it.
Yeah,
this is the point. There is not at this point a majority in Parliament for anything. There is not a majority in Parliament for Chequers, for EFTA, for Canada, for No Deal. There is not a majority for anything. The biggest majority the biggest group in Parliament that there is anything for at the moment is Chequers, because there are quite a few Labour people who will swallow it.
I noticed everything is going more popular recently. Now, the interesting thing about this is, I think it might have convinced quite a lot of people that probably should go for it, even though probably it's not possible because of the Conservatives. I think the reason why it's going possible because it's basically how we have entered the EU or the European community. We were a founding member in 1960 and we transitioned into the European using EFTA. And lots of ideas that we can do that out. This is why in the slideshow, EFTA is getting mentioned as a viable option to leave the EU. And compared to Chequers, it probably is a slightly better arrangement. Simply because what May's offering is Chequers with with EFTA, we'd be outside one of the freedom of trade, which is I think the EU is warming up to the idea of us making trade with Chequers, but it's a thing that's coming more popular in recent years. It's obvious why. It's basically slowly transitioning out. Probably the wisest thing to go about it. Well, yeah. Even though I think F is probably the right way to go about it, it's probably not going to happen.
I think the EU is likely to swallow Chequers.
Yeah.
The EU is likely to swallow. I've seen a few. I was reading through the side chat while you speak.
I think there's lots of skepticism amongst the European Commission, but I think the member states have actually approved Chequers. I mean, there's a few exceptions.
What we have to remember is the European Commission is beholden to the states. So, although the European Commission commissioners might have a view on it, they can't do jack if the states say no. So, at the end of the day, if the states decide they like Chequers, they will have to take it, even though you'll hear Juncker and others make all sorts of noises about how much they don't like it.
To read out a couple more comments. Sorry about that, Bell, by the way. Bubblevis has asked, what's your views on the UN Migration Pact?
I don't know enough about it, to be fair. I did see his earlier comment that apparently the Polish Prime Minister said to Merkel's face that he would not sign up to it, which is really quite bold, to be fair, to do that in front of Merkel. I don't know enough about it, honestly. I need to do some more research on it.
Actually, I saw something on my Russian. Apparently, it's in a lot of pressure because Poland's quite against that new American Pact. I think it's the fifth country. It's quite a recent thing. It's in a lot of. I'm not. I don't know too much about it, but that's what I heard.
Leon,
oh no!
Leon, hang on, can I just quickly interrupt you, Cam? Sorry, because I need to.
Right.
Leon King says the EU rejected checkers. They did initially, but what? Again, things are changing, and because the UK isn't really moving on checkers that much, the EU is starting to shift because the states are shifting. This is the important thing we have to remember: the EU and the European Commission has to represent the states within the EU. It cannot do its own thing because that's just not how it works. So if the EU Commission can say what it likes about checkers, but if the states say, and this is why at the time I thought it was a bit of a foolhardy errand, but it seems to have worked for the Conservatives. This is why it was being touted around Eastern Europe so much, and why it was being sent to Germany and all the rest of it. You had Jeremy Hunt going to Estonia and all the rest of it. Because if you can swing all the states around on checkers, the Commission has no choice. It has to accept it because that's how the EU Commission works by nature. So, and by constitution. So the EU can say what it likes right now, but if the states are like, yeah, we want that, actually, that's fine. Barnier will be rendered useless.
Anyway, should we move on to the next
Is there
headline?
or are we done?
Yeah, I think we've got a bit too much. We discussed it earlier. Is that it? Yeah, that appears to be it. I'm okay now. Right. So earlier I got sent a few articles. So I think what I'm going to do is going to go over some news articles. For probably the next hour.
All right. Well, I have to go at 5, so.
All right.
Yeah, we'll probably keep this going for about 50 more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. But before we do wrap it up, I want to discuss a couple of news stories, developments in European politics, specifically France and Germany, and Bolsonaro's victory in Brazil.
Unless Cam's got anything he wants to bring up, because after history.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, it's like we'll go with what Cam has first, but those are just the only two things I want to discuss.
What we can do, you can discuss them now, or we'll prefer the articles.
Okay, we'll start with Bolsonaro then. So basically, the rundown of it is Brazil had its presidential elections last week. Bolsonaro won with 55% of the votes and is now president-elect. He will be inaugurated on the 1st of January next year, and the reaction has been sort of mixed across the globe. Everyone on the left and the centre is not happy. People on the right, the far right, are overjoyed.
And economists are loving it as well.
And economists are loving it as well, because the reason for that is Bolsonaro is an ultra privatizer, and privatization always benefits the rich.
So Bolsonaro is really interesting because the general theme of populism around the world, because of how neoliberal most of the world's economics are, has always been massively right-wing on social issues, but left-wing economically. Bolsonaro has bucked that trend, but it's not because Bolsonaro is particularly neoliberal. It's because Bolsonaro is fighting against the sort of socialist status quo in Brazil. That's the way to be a populist in Brazil. So he has gone neoliberal because the status quo is currently democratic socialism. Now, Bolsonaro does have a history of some pretty left-wing economics, if you actually look back at the things he used to campaign for. But he has shifted pretty dramatically. Although he's always been a right-winger socially, he has been a left-winger in the past. He'd never say it because he hates the left. He really, really hates the left. And that comes from in the military and his time during the dictatorship.
Yeah, this is the difference between Bolsonaro and the other European populists. And Glenn Greenwald pointed this out very effectively. He's done very good coverage of this, I think. Yeah. Bolsonaro is not like the typical European populist.
Glenn Greenwald lives in Brazil.
What?
It does help that Glenn Greenwald lives in Brazil, so he's like,
Yeah, it does. He's
Yeah.
not like the typical European populist, because the European populists, in their main concern is immigration, Islam, national identity, protectionism, so on and so forth. Bolsonaro comes from that far right tradition in the 60s of extreme anti communism and CIA backed coups in South America. His whole philosophy in life since he joins the military has been fight against communism by any means necessary
his
and
life
crush the
is
left.
basically hashtag own the libs.
Yeah, that's his basic philosophy. It's hashtag own the libtards and not much else. But in addition to that, you've got the typical stuff which you usually get from a lot of European populists. He's really homophobic, he's really misogynistic, he's really racist, pro-torture, pro-death penalty, pro-dictatorship, full-blown privatizer. Not a very pleasant individual.
He's quoted as saying in 1999 that he thinks that the dictatorship should have killed up to 30,000 people.
Yeah. He also, I think,
He's not
said
fucking
he also said recently that the Chamber of Deputies should just be got rid of because it blocks legislation.
Except he probably won't do that because he's ended up winning the deputy, the Chamber of Deputies anyway.
Yeah.
So, fuck anything for him.
There will be his mini yes men, so he probably won't get rid of it as they're on his side.
Now, what I object to is the Western framing of this, and he's embraced it. The Western framing of this is Trump of the tropics, because I know the narrative has always been that Trump is a fascist / pseudo-fascist. I've always pushed back on that because I don't think he is. He's a right-wing populist, and there are some things he does that are fascistic, but he is not a fascist. Trump has never really been a proper fascist. This overuse of the word fascist, and this is something I've warned about before, this overuse of the word fascist means that actual fascists aren't taken seriously because, oh, you just write him off as a fascist like you do every other right-winger. It's dangerous to do that. It's genuinely dangerous to do that. And this is the case with Bolsonaro. Everyone is saying, oh, he's like Trump, but for Brazil. No, he's not. He is significantly worse. And this is something I'm afraid that a lot of sort of Trumpian type right wingers have fallen for. I've seen it in a few places where, oh, he just says loads of things to piss people off. No, he genuinely believes this stuff. This guy is more in tune with someone like Duterte. That is a better comparison. Duterte said a load of crazy things and then actually went and did them. Bolsonaro, I think, is the same type of person. He says a lot of crazy shit and he will probably do most of it.
It's like what I said on the Sunday stream last week when I was discussing the election. The difference between Trump and Bolsonaro is Trump is a person who will say a bunch of crazy shit but never follow through with it. Bolsonaro is a person who will say a bunch of crazy shit and then he will follow through with it.
See, there was an appearance by Scaramucci, the former communications director for the White House,
who served a grand total of 10 days in office.
There was an appearance by Scaramucci on Bill Maher, and Scaramucci basically said, look, if you want to beat Trump, here's how to do it. And I think he's bang on with this. Stop reacting to the crazy shit he says because he's saying it because he knows he'll get that reaction, and he knows that everyone in middle America loves to see the coastal elites get pissed off at things that Trump says. Bill Maher basically reacted to that by losing his shit and saying, hang on, Trump lies all the time. We have to challenge his lies. And Scaramucci is basically saying, no, what you do is you just ignore him, because if you ignore him, you're not playing his game, and then he loses. Bolsonaro is a very different type of candidate because he's not lying out and out. He's saying to you, okay, this is what I think of this group, that group, the other group. This is what I want to do here, there, and in this other place. I'm going to do it. You watch. He will do it. He will do most of what he's talked about doing.
Another thing to back up that as well is you can see the difference in how the two reacted when they got elected president. When Trump was elected, he did mostly a 180 on everything that he did in the campaign. He ran a divisive campaign, but then called for unity and promised to be a president for all Americans. Bolsonaro hasn't bothered to do that. He's still doubling down on his extremely divisive rhetoric.
Mm.
Which further adds on to this idea that he is a person who says something and will do it.
Yeah. Joel Kelly makes a really good point in the side chat. He says, fascist is for the left what postmodernist or neo-Marxist are for the right. Vague ass insults which are almost meaningless at this point. Yes, and this is the thing. People overusing these terms water them down and then make them less important, make them less relevant, and then they don't hit as hard when actually there is a real fascist coming. Bubbleviz is saying a point that I actually agree with to a degree. Not every state can support a democratic leader. Sometimes you need, I'm paraphrasing, but sometimes you need a strong man, etc. He's not saying that Bolsonaro is the right person for Brazil, but maybe he might be. I'm saying no, because, okay, in certain places I hear you on that, because sometimes you need a strongman leader. Like, okay, most of the Arab world, I think that's...
Yeah.
History has told us that overthrowing Saddam was a stupid idea. Yes, Saddam was awful, but he did keep...
You can have... My view on it is I do agree with that. There are some countries in this world that are not built to be democracies.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that you elect somebody who is going to go and violate the human rights of their citizens. You can have someone who is really authoritarian, crushes dissent, and unites his country, but doesn't go and genocide a group of people.
Bolsonaro, my issue with Bolsonaro is he is responsible for the fifth largest economy in the world, the fourth largest democracy in the world. Democracy in Brazil is quite young. They were only freed from the dictatorship in 1985. So democracy there is really young. He is the last.
Brazil doesn't really have democratic institutions that have checks and balances in like the US and UK do, because both countries have been democracies for such a long time.
Yeah. Now, if you were talking about a country like Libya or Iraq or Syria, or I'm trying to think of a non-Arab example, but I'm sure there are some.
Mali.
Because of the nature of those countries, because they're essentially artificial constructs, you need someone like that. You need a strongman in there. You need someone who is a bit authoritarian to keep everything together, because if you don't have that, you are essentially letting the tribes feud with each other freely, and you can't do that. But Brazil is not that type of country. It just isn't. Let's have a read. What else have we got here?
So yeah,
Bubbleviz is responding to someone else, but I think this is worth reading out. He said, "I'm calculating that the press coverage of him has been quite extreme, and he will not be so severe." I disagree. I mean, look at Duterte. Duterte's fallen off the radar of the press because he is so horrible. There's just only so many column inches you can give a man like that. Bolsonaro will probably fall off the press's radar because A, we don't tend to care about Brazilian politics anyway in the West, and B, he will just continue to say outrageous shit and we'll get tired of it. But he will do some pretty horrible things as well.
I'm sending a video into the chat. This is a video of Bolsonaro's rhetoric over the last few decades of him being a congressman, saying every single horrible thing under the sun that you can imagine. And this isn't media coverage. This isn't edited in any way. This is a person who lives in Brazil, has lived in Brazil for quite a long time. I mean, they're a university student, but they've lived in the country most of their life, who knows about Bolsonaro because he's been involved in politics for about 27 years. So there's a lot of stuff on him.
And he's been in 9 different parties, by the way.
And in 9 different parties as well to back that up. And she's made a compilation of all of the horrendous things that he said. Go and read that. There's no media spin to it, and you will see truly what kind of a man he is.
Yeah, Bubbleviz. Yeah, go do some research on Duterte. You will see why I do not like Bolsonaro if you research Duterte.
Yeah, Duterte is Brazil. I mean, Bolsonaro is Brazil's version of Duterte. That is the fairest comparison I could make. Or, to bring it more closer to home to somebody who you might know, he's very similar to Erdogan in Turkey.
Yes. That's a good example, actually. Notice, and again, bringing it back to the Sargon of Akkad's yardstick. Sargon of Akkad doesn't endorse Duterte. He doesn't endorse Bolsonaro. He endorses some pretty objectionable people, but he won't go that far. And there's a good reason why he won't. Because for all the shit we give Sargon, there is a limit to him. He won't go so far. So if even someone like him isn't prepared to endorse Bolsonaro or Duterte, but he's quite happy to endorse someone like Trump or Le Pen, you've got to be asking yourself some questions if you fall on that side of the spectrum.
So the basic summary of all of what we've discussed about this story is he was elected. It's not good news for Brazil. And if I was gay or a woman or black or any sort of minority group and I was living in Brazil, I would get the fuck out of the country as soon as possible. And there is going to be some very dark times in store for Brazil over the next 4 years of his presidency.
Well, the Bullet Club's own Will Slater has said that he's noticed an awful lot more Brazilians in Spain. I would dare say you see a lot more of them in London. Those that can afford to, that feel that they will be persecuted, will leave. Just watch.
I mean, that's what a lot of. This is a very extreme example, but one that's sort of similar. It's what a lot of rich Jewish people did in Weimar Germany after Hitler got elected. They left the country as soon as possible and fled to America and Britain.
Yeah. I mean, that was the case with Ed Miliband's family.
Yeah. John Cooper says, why do Matt and Thomas always leave a topic really depressing? Well, because we're realists. Because we're realists. I'm sorry. We see things for what they are.
Yeah. It basically comes down to the fact we're both realists. I mean, I think Matthew's a hell of a lot more depressing about the state of affairs because I'm almost ready to give up on Brazil because of what's happened there. I won't ignore them because you can't ignore Brazil. It's an emerging economy and it's going to dominate world politics over the next 50 years. But I have lost a lot of faith in them after what they've done. I understand why they've done it, but it doesn't take away from the fact that I've got not that much faith in them.
Oh, I almost forgot to mention this, and someone's brought it up sort of via a really sick joke. Joel Kelly says, put your savings into Brazilian helicopter manufacturers. No, that's really, really sick, and I shouldn't laugh. The reason that's a thing is because Pinochet, who was a dictator in Chile, he was a right-wing sort of, what would you call him? Right-wing dictator, but not quite fascistic. He was a weird one. But yeah, Pinochet used to throw communists out of helicopters, and Bolsonaro has said quite openly that he supported Pinochet.
Why am I not surprised?
So,
I also thought the helicopter came from.
As for the whole, Bubblevis has also said those sentences are without context. The only thing I'll say about that is to take one of these examples, because one of the examples is him speaking at Dilma Rousseff's impeachment. How is citing a military colonel who in 2008 was condemned for human rights abuses and torture, who was a colonel when Dilma Rousseff herself was tortured when she was part of a Marxist guerrilla group? How is that good? I mean, taken out of context. There isn't any context that can make that statement better. The same with him saying the minorities either adapt or simply disappear. There's no context that improves that statement.
Joel Kelly says, referring to, because we mentioned Germany in this, it was massive loss of human capital, which seriously damaged Germany. Maybe he will. I don't know what that word is supposed to mean. Ferret?
I think it's basically saying that there was capital fight in Germany, and if there's a lot of capital fight because of the horrible things he does, he may change his tune just to stop business from leaving Brazil.
Well, one of the things I noticed, Glenn Greenwald pointed it out, and then I went looking. The Canadian state broadcaster CBC, they are quite happy to condemn Bolsonaro for the social stuff he says, but yes, the economic side of it has got people quite excited. Well, it's got the rich and private companies quite excited, because apparently there's now a big push from Canadian logging firms and oil firms to go to Brazil when Bolsonaro gets in. So the Canadian economy might profit from this. So the CBC are conflicted, because it's this whole Bolsonaro is absolutely awful, but we want this money. And whatever you think of climate change, yeah, whether you're a skeptic or not, cutting down the Amazon is not a good idea. Full stop. It is a ridiculous idea, and Bolsonaro has supported this. He has quite openly supported basically just destroying the Amazon for the sake of commercial gain and for profiteering. That is dangerous. That is straight up dangerous.
It is in. It's been. Yeah, you know what Amazon does, right? An oil forestry. What they do is recycle carbon dioxide in auction. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Amazon does this more than any other forest on Earth. If you get rid of that, it will seriously damage the natural environment, not just in South America, but the entire planet. Because what forests do is help slow down climate change. It's not
even
that either.
You need oxygen.
It's not the same. It's through medicine research. A lot of plants in animals that we used to for research, and we lose that. That's why it's also dangerous. But of course, there's the effects on local wildlife and the indigenous people that live in there. Quite horrendous. It's not just Amazon as well. It's Congo. It's in Madagascar, Borneo. The big one over there. This is why orangutans are dangerous. Because the habitat's been destroyed.
By the way, watch the exodus from Saudi massively speed up because of this. Because there are two things that are happening at the same time. Bolsonaro is coming into power and he is going nuts on oil and everything else. And you've also got an unrelated sort of side note, but it's interesting. Turkey has discovered it's got oil deposits off of its coast. Quite large ones. So watch the mass exodus from Saudi off the back of Bolsonaro getting into power.
Yeah.
That's going to happen because Saudi is starting to run out of oil. They've acknowledged this by trying to change their economy. They've had to. Yeah, watch for that one.
We'll still give them weapons to blow the shit out of Yemeni children.
Yeah, it's not in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is losing oil as well. Was it the North Sea? It's
yeah, the North Sea.
The Americans.
That one keeps being pushed back because they keep saying we've got so much, then they find more. So
yeah, that was a long time ago, but virtually without.
To Tom's point about weapons, the US has been pushing for a 30-day limit on finding a ceasefire. That's the first time they've come out and said this. Mattis, I think, said it this week, that they want a ceasefire within 30 days, no conditions. And a bunch of other countries have jumped in on the back of this. So that, and apparently, according to people within the White House, etc., talking to the press, this is because of Khashoggi.
So Khashoggi's death could be a turning point.
Indeed.
Well, at least something good came out of a really bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's also
So enough about that.
Go on. I think Cam had one more thing.
there's also two things.
Okay, go on. One more.
If Saudi runs out of oil, there's one country that's going to empower more than any other country on the planet, and that's Russia. Now,
Yeah.
Russia has the largest oil and gas reserve. Right. If Saudi runs out, we're going to have to buy from the Russians, which may be a bit difficult. You could it's going to give them an awful lot of power.
Russia will become the new
Which is
Saudi.
Well, yes, this is why
Everyone with Russia is sort of
even
really reluctant, have to way.
if this is one case where Russia's in brick, even if its economic stagnating, even its population is actually declining. Actually, if you combine the French and British populations together, it's about the same version of Russia. So this is why Russia is still a power to be reckoned with in the long-term future. Because inevitably, we're going to have to turn to them. Or if they go to like Antarctica and export that, where there's actually these oil. So, the next 50 years is going to be quite interesting. As the political sphere actually changes away.
Especially watch the US Iran thing as well, because they've just brought in the sanctions again. And Russia are openly saying we will work with Iran for oil. So if we have this uncomfortable situation with Russia, that's going to cause all sorts of ethical issues with the US, because they're going to be like, oh, hang on a minute. We're sanctioning Iran, but at the same time we're getting oil for Russia, which probably means it's Iranian oil by proxy. Oh boy, we're having all sorts of fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a conscious effort actually by America to get off, particularly Eastern European countries and Germany, off Russian oil and gas. I mean, Trump's been doing that for the last year. So.
The Nord Stream 2 pipeline and all the controversy around
that. Anyway, I actually got some articles.
Before we discuss the article, I just wanted to do the final thing that I wanted to cover about the French and German elections. Well, not elections, but polling, more accurately. And very interesting developments there from France in particular.
Yes. So, Cameron, before, cause I don't know how much you've heard us talk about this. Who do you think is leading in France as far as popularity is concerned? Just off the top of your head. Oh, I don't think he's around.
I think he's gone.
Well, the sort of perceived wisdom, the received wisdom around the world is that the next election is going to be between Mélenchon, crazy nationalist leftist nutcase, versus Le Pen, crazy nationalist right-wing nutcase.
Basically, Mélenchon is literally a communist, you fucking idiot. And
he likes to scream at the police and say that he is the Republic. Idiot.
And then you got Marine Le Pen, the really right-wing authoritarian woman. But they're not actually leading in the polls.
Nope, they're actually below Macron, who is in 4th place in the poll.
Yeah. The people who are ahead in the polls, well, I'll start with the latest one, and I'll go from number 1 to number 4. A guy whose name I can't pronounce, I apologise, but I know what his political party is. His political party is called the New Anti-Capitalist Party, which is basically Mélenchon without the crazy nationalism sprinkled in.
Yeah.
And then there's Modem, which is basically a sort of centre-right political party, kind of like Vince Cable's Lib Dems.
With the veteran that is Bayrou in charge.
Yeah, who's much like Macron, used to be a government minister in Hollande's cabinet, but then left and formed his own party. And then there is a surprising comeback from Hamon, from the Socialists. And then there's finally Macron.
Hamon for 2022.
Yeah.
Please and thank you.
It's an extremely interesting development because everyone, including myself, was saying that the next election was going to be contested between Mélenchon and Le Pen. That does not look like it's going to be the case.
Nope.
Instead, it's very possible that it could be Hamon versus the new anti-capitalist party, or Hamon versus Bayrou.
Or even the new anti-capitalist party versus Beirut. Anyway, the point is, Macron has a 21% approval rating. 21% approval rating. And Mélenchon and Le Pen are both below him. If that tells you anything, if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will.
And then the other polling is for Germany. What we're seeing in Germany is what I like to call the hashtag Green Revolution.
Green Surge.
Green Surge. The Greens in the latest polling are polling at 24%, and the CDU, CSU are on 27%. AFD are on 13%, SPD are on 13%, FDP are on 9%, and Die Linke are on 11%.
So the AFD surge that everyone was talking about has plateaued and actually started to reduce. So right-wing nationalism in Germany is no longer popular. And
but instead, what we have seen...
integrationalist centre-left.
Yeah, what we're seeing rise in Germany is green politics, which is very centre-left in its outlook.
Trending is nonsense. The only country it's really trending... Well, the only parts of Europe it's really trending in are the eastern half of Europe and Italy. By the way, to John was asking if the new anti-capitalist party is basically like UK Labour. No, it's probably a bit further left than that, but it's not quite as left-wing as Mélenchon. So it's sort of somewhere between the two.
Yeah, it's between UK Labour and Mélenchon. That's where I would describe the new anti-capitalist party. But what these polls in Germany reveal is it's very possible that we could see the Greens in Germany become the largest party in the Bundestag.
Largest single party, we should stress, because CDU and CSU are always listed as one party together, even though they're two separate ones.
If you were also to separate the two political parties, the Greens are the largest single party in the whole of Germany.
Yep. And bear in mind, Merkel is going this week. She announced she's out. She will not stand for the next election. She will not stand for leadership of the CDU. The two most likely to succeed her are Merz and Strahm. Both of them are hardline right-wingers, basically. The one she would like to succeed her, I forget her name, but she's basically almost a Merkel clone. I even heard the BBC this morning called her a Merkel clone. So that's probably not going to happen, which probably means that the Greens will continue to surge because the CDU is essentially attempting to fill the void that the AFD has kind of created, and will kill themselves by trying to do it because there is not the appetite in Germany for that kind of politics.
Bubblevers says, a Merkel clown? No, clone, not clown. but yeah, we talked about
good riddance. Really... I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, she is a clown, I would say that much. But basically, we started off our segment with a really depressing news story, and we've ended it with a small glimmer of hope in two countries.
Indeed.
And that's all we wanted to talk about. So, Cameron, what article did you want?
I got a couple of articles. I got 4. I'm not sure I can get through them all, but I tried it once. At least one article that sent each person sent me articles. So the first one I'm gonna share it shortly is on Tuesday. Alright, let's get up now. So, here you go. So, Child's Play. Theresa May to do a kids' PNQs on Sky News show.
Get ready for your cringe-induced
strokes. It's going to be cringy. Imagine the so-called It's a question that some children ask. I mean, I'm always very questionable when I was younger, so this is going to be quite amusing to see it. Zach, hey, how are you and Donald Trump getting along? I'm sure that'd be a great question. So Theresa May has agreed to take part in a fortnightly question and answer session in Sky News on the condition that all questions are asked by children.
This is
Yeah.
so bad.
Me, I actually put that as a condition because you think some children will ask the worst possible. I think some children will ask awkward questions.
By the way, you're being accused of hacking Swiss in the site.
I'm hacking Swiss.
Wenzel says you hacked Swiss.
Yeah, I got Sergey to take him out as a traitor. He left the labour party. He's a traitor. Sergey's after him. Swiss is contained at the moment. I showed him on side after some talk sessions with Peter Patel.
Okay.
And then, right, I call this as a part of appearance, may answer 2 questions to children with the interview pre-recorded in Downing Street. The first question posed by 8-year-old boy called Zach, asked the Prime Minister when he gets on US President Donald Trump. The Prime Minister's decision to take part in this year is a coup for Sky Kids, which commissioned the programme. However, it could anger some Sky News, who become frustrated with Downing Street's perceived reluctance to allow May to be interviewed by the channel. But compared to other broadcasters, she has not appeared on Sky News' flagship Sophie Ridge on Sunday political interview programme since its first episode in January 2017. But earlier this year, Sky News' director, news gathering, Jonathan Levi, was among those who signed a public letter complaining about the limited access given to some broadcasters during the Conservative Party conference. Taking part in the program could have political benefits, although children cannot vote. It's another opportunity for politicians to reach their parents and watch alongside their kids. Right, I think we should end there.
Is that
what I'm
because
saying.
Downstairs?
So the basic idea is I'm a question show about children asking Prime Minister questions. And the controversy behind it is that people don't have access to the Prime Minister, especially Sky News. A lot of people are not happy about it.
To be fair, Channel 4 has more right with her than Sky News does, and I actually think that they've got more of a case.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, actually. It's quite amusing to see questions.
Actually a good idea, but I feel like May will make this torturous.
Well, she always does. And the fact that it's pre-recorded as well is a bit dodgy. But why can't they do it live? The same problem was with the point during the election campaign. Theresa May didn't want to go out and campaign properly. Most of the things are pre-organised and pre-arranged. Like in the campaign, she visited a sort of, it was like a card factory, and she went in and she told the employer to pick some couple of employees on purpose for interview. And this is the same issue. It's not reaching out to the British people at home. It's just being not engaging. What's the issue with this? It's interesting that portrait again. You actually children because children are like.
I think they're trying to make a kind of figure.
Because children don't have many political biases or parents have. And an issue of this is that the Conservatives seriously need to be catching people. I can see what they're trying to do.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So has everyone got my thoughts on this before I move on?
I've not really. No, I think this is just going to go really badly wrong.
Yeah, I think it would very cringe.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next one's going to be a more interesting subject because I haven't spoke about it, even though it's looming up as well. It's right. It's changed. it's the midterms.
You would dangle that in front of me just at the end of the story, wouldn't you?
Well, we haven't discussed it. I have to bring it up. Early voter turnout surges as party stage final push. Republicans try to show up vulnerable candidates as Democrats see prospects expanding in the House. It's a very long article, but it's basically summarising what's happening in the midterms. Where it's not this report article, and this report article is clear that it's very high turnout compared to the average midterm election. Which is
to be fair, the average midterm turnout is something like it's between 30% and 40%.
Yes,
it's really low.
Yeah.
Hello, Angels. Because this has been turned into a referendum on how Trump is doing, it's engaged a lot more people. I am not so convinced on this whole blue wave thing. I used to be, but the more I look at polling and the more I see how things are going and how certain issues are playing with the American public, the more I think you're likely to see the Democrats gain in the House, and we'll probably win the House, and we'll probably have like a 20-seat majority, which is about half of what the general press are reporting. But I don't think they'll gain the Senate. If anything, I think they'll probably lose in the Senate. The Dems are not playing very well in the wider public because their message isn't getting out. The only Democrats that are making any headway in the press are the proper anti-Trump Democrats, the sort of anti-Trump shriekers, if you will, as opposed to any real sort of policy-driven Democrats. They're not making the same headway in the press.
Yeah, I actually agree. I never thought the Democrats would do as well as people say. I could see that they're quite weak, they're very divided. In terms of getting some sort of message out against Trump. I can see it between the so-called corporate Democrats and the more social democratic Democrats. You just see it. You can see it's a very divided party that can't really come together.
I think in the long term, the social democratic Democrats will win the day. You see that trend now, but there will be a big pushback. I can see after the midterms, there's going to be a massive pushback from the press because the press don't like it. They really don't like it because they are so focused. And I mean, I saw this with CNN this week. I have their app on my phone, and I got a push notification when Merkel said she was stepping down. There was a notification that came up on my phone which said, "Leader of the free world is resigning." And I'm like, you're just trying at this. You're desperately trying to trigger Trump people. This is not a good look from a US based outlet.
Yeah.
Whatever you think of Trump, this is stupid.
Yeah, I remember this. When Trump got elected,
But
everyone.
having an orange-skinned man baby in charge of America, I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Okay, it's reasonable. It's reason. Okay, Angels, I don't disagree that it's not reasonable to say. I don't disagree that it's reasonable to say. But if you are the US supposedly the largest outlet in the US, which they're not, by the way, Fox is still the biggest. But they play themselves as like the voice of America, as it were. If you are the biggest outlet in the US, that is a stupid thing to do, because especially when the Trumpites really, really hate you.
I mean,
you're asking to trigger them. You're trying. You're really trying.
We are talking about the US. I don't understand why anybody would think any different or assume any different. I would just automatically assume that would be the case. Surely,
it's not healthy. Especially, bear in mind, this was the week after all those attacks on. Or the mail bombs were sent out and the attack on the synagogue and everything else. It kind of plays into the narrative that Trump puts forward that the media are helping to stoke this. And they're not, by the way. I don't think that they are. But it does play into that narrative when you have the media putting out headlines like that. It's really silly. You're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, true. Mind you, pandering to Trump is also probably not the best
I
idea.
don't for a second think I'm saying that you should pander to Trump. You shouldn't. You should criticize him. But when the you know, the American narrative is that the American president is the leader of the free world, and you're saying that the leader of the free world is resigning, referring to Germany, and you're the American press. What the hell are you playing at? That's a really silly thing to do.
Well, the whole notion of the leader of the free world is a ridiculous notion. And this idea that
it's a ridiculous notion, but you know, it's the narrative, isn't it?
I mean,
people play on narrative.
The idea that Merkel's leader of the free world is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, of course, it's influential, but what the hell? Leader of the free. I mean, these people are idiotic.
We need.
This Merkel thing came out. Yeah, this Merkel thing came out when Trump got elected. When people say that the American president's no longer leader of the free world, it's Merkel. Someone needs to choose a mayor. Actually, not. It was the article in. Is it MSNBC who said is choosing mayor leader of the free world now? Literally said that. So
is Theresa May anything?
I want to take a notice of it's a nonsensical statement. America's actually big and so as a good free nation, good on US. People are not as free as you think.
While you were speaking there, Cam, I was reading through some of the comments, and I want to address a couple because I'm gonna have to go in a second. Just want to address a couple. To say that the Democrats don't have a decent platform or a decent message is wrong. The Democrats do have a decent platform and they do have a decent message. The thing is, the press isn't interested in reporting it, and the Democrats that they tend to get on to represent them on the press don't push their policy platform. If you actually look at what their platform is, though, and you speak to Democrats who are actually out there doing proper campaigning, their platform is actually really good. It is, you know, pretty standard sort of social democratic stuff, and it's playing really well when people actually hear about it. The press doesn't want people to hear about it. I think it's a coordinated effort by the press. They are just interested in shrieking and shouting and hollering about Trump. That's all they want to do. They don't want to talk about policy issues because they want the conversation to be about Trump because it's ratings. This is the problem when you have press which is so heavily run on the basis of profit, because all they care about is ratings. They're not interested in actual news. They're just not. The only news outlet in the States that is interested in news, you've got NPR and PBS. NPR has a pretty obvious leftist bent. PBS is probably the only US media outlet I would trust anymore, because they actually report the news and they're reasonably fair with it. So it's not that the Dems don't have a message. They do. It's wrong to say they don't. Now, I mean, as an example of this, look at the primaries in California. Every single Democrat that won in California, every single one, even people like Feinstein had to change on this, ran on Medicare for all. They had to. They had no choice. Because if you ran against Medicare for all, you lost. It's as simple as that. Yeah, that's all I've got to say on the US midterms. I think people need to manage their expectations a little bit on the blue wave, but also don't think that this is all the Democrats' fault. It's not all the Democrats' fault. Some of them are to blame, but it's not all their fault. A lot of this is down to the press.
Guys, just very quickly to note, there's quite a few people who have not got the Alternative Sunday Stream link who are regular Swiss viewers, so I will tweet it out, but can you guys also tweet out the watch link? Anyone who, you know, just because
I think we're nearly done anyway, so
I'm being summoned. I'm gonna love you and leave you guys. I'm sorry to abandon you so quickly, but I've got to go.
No, that's all right, Matthew.
It's fine. Bye. Yeah, I did tweet out the watch link earlier. Posted it if you person.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Like if we're because I also just sort of popped on quite quick. I've actually got some family over, so I can't really stay that long either. In fact, I didn't want to miss so much. I wanted to join earlier, but I couldn't.
I mean,
it's alright. We'll probably end
Yeah.
soon.
we'll have like next week to do it, but I think we've covered everything we wanted to.
Yeah, there's probably one thing I want to look at before because the ending, which was something that my average Joe. But
Okay,
Oh, we'll do Average Joe's one, and then we'll probably wrap up.
here we go.
that's fine. And then later on this evening, if people are around, I may well just do a random stream, just like a sort of a wind down, a bit of a stand-in, you know, for Sunday stream, and whoever wants to join.
So-
Well, you need to create a new hangout because the off-air one is dead.
No, it's not. I revived it.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, I created a new one anyway. So if that's not right, that's link for that. But
Yeah, we'll keep the link the same for now. But
yes,
yeah.
right. Economist shuts down Marco Portillo with brutal analogy why austerity doesn't work. The kids are dead. And we've been kicked out of our house.
This was by Grace Bakley. She is brilliant.
But at least we're not spending more. Not spending more than we earn anymore. And then back in Economist, with former Victorian Marco Portillo explaining why should be austerity has hampered attempts to balance UK's budget. Grace Baker used a series of analogies as he clashed with Portillo during BBC's speech on Thursday night of the government's economic austerity policy. Baker, who sits on Labour's National Policy Forum, said austerity does not work. It's counterproductive. And this is why we are seeing that the deficit has not been eliminated. It was supposed to be eliminated in 2015. Then it was 2018. And we are still here having the same questions over and over again. Actually, no, that out. The same deficit won't be eliminated until probably about 2030 now. It's because we have taken away our productive base of the economy. It'd be like a ball thing, and going through the whole time, I'll send it on my ball stalls, and then close it actually the other week. I'm going to stop selling the most expensive beer. You get the point where that reduces your revenues, right? And the business fails even more, and you have to cut even more. That's effectively what we've seen with austerity to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Portillo hit back with a metaphor of his own saying. The policy that you are advocating is like a family saying, well, we don't have any money, we are living beyond our means. So what we are is to borrow more. And what we do is to call it investing. So we borrow a lot of money, spend it on this and that, and the other, and pretend that's going to raise our productive capital. Baker replied, let's take that metaphor, shall we? In tourism, we and this family. We're spending more than we earn. What are we going to do? So, okay, we're going to stop putting our children, stop paying our rent. 8 years down there, and the kids are dead. We were kicked out of our house. But at least we're not spending more than we earn anymore. What's the aim? The aim of economic policy is so we can put fair and just economic policy. Portillo replied, I think it's just more, you think this is more sensible than this family. That ultimately means well, much more than any kid itself. But actually invested in is budget capacity. The government remains committed to the budget deficit by the middle of the next decade to achieve this by slashing public spending by 2010. Tourism announced austerity over the scales in call to question as local government budgets continue for past 2020.
Right. So a few points on this. Obviously, I'm not an economist, but it's quite clear that austerity is and has always been a choice that governments have either chose to implement or not. It's never been absolutely necessary. I understand why governments would want to reduce a deficit, but the fact is that I feel like it went way too far, and I feel like you can't. I mean, I've said it time and time again. I know it's a bit of a sort of a catchphrase, but things like there are basically a lot more subtleties that come into it. for a country that actually works, and like a government that actually implements policy which largely works for everyone. I understand nothing's perfect, but you can't, there has to be an element of investment in order to see something back. You can't cut your way to prosperity, like the old adage.
Let's take the Keynesian view of this. Now, the last 8 years, there was record low interest rates. Right. So what we should do is actually invest it. Keynes actually argues that in times of hardship, you actually spend more. You literally spend more to get the economy going, and then you cut back when you prosper, so the economy is doing well. That's the key idea about Keynesian economics, which probably in the case we had in the last 8 years really worked.
Yeah,
we should have invested. I mean, the fact we did really bother to invest in the economy. But
am I also right in saying that? Of course, I'm really, like I said, economics is not my area, but like I believe that austerity measures, especially some of them, really badly impact economic growth. So like growth way lower than what it could be if you had either a mix. Well, let's face it, everybody has to have a mixed approach, right? But like I said, if you cut, and then your growth falls, and then you cut some more, basically more of a failed policy is not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, in this country,
any economist worth their weight will explain to you that you cut during a boom and you spend during a bust. That's what you do. And what the government has done over the last 8 years, because of the fact we've got a government run by geniuses, has cut during a bust. And that just doesn't make any sense at all to do, because the analogy she gave was really good, where you've got a business that's failing, and so you sell the beer, you sell the bar stools, you then just sell most of everything else in there. And what you've done is, you've paid off your debts, but you're not generating revenue. And if you haven't fully paid off your debt, what have you got left to sell? And that's what this government has done over the last 8 years. But we shouldn't be surprised they've done this, because when your economist for the last 6 years was a guy whose background was in journalism and not economics, it's no wonder why everything goes terrible as a result of that.
Yeah, well, Osborne had a degree in history, not economics.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's just much in the same way that you make Boris Johnson the foreign secretary. It's like, why do you do that? The guy is an arse clown in every sense of the word.
Of course.
Yes, indeed. I'm glad we got to go through the article, and I'm sorry to make like a fleeting appearance, but I have to go because I've got family here. However, I will probably be doing a stream later on, so I'll like tweet out the link and we can sort it all out later. But
all right, fine.
Cheers, everyone, and I will see you later.
See ya. So that's the basic article. The one thing I want to say on this is key. Now, when you have an interest rate that's completely low, right, it's absolutely scandalous. You'd actually use that to your advantage, especially when borrowing has increased exponentially in the last 8 years. Actually, this government, even though we're in a period of austerity, right, has borrowed more than the last Labour in 13 years. And still, they haven't used the money to invest in public services. Granted, they're using much of the money actually servicing our debt from the bar, especially their interest, which most of that has gone to. But we haven't invested in public services in that period. And it's absolutely scandalous. When you see so many people on the streets, so many poverty, it's unbelievable. Right. Is there anything you want to discuss?
No, not really. I discussed all I wanted to with Bolsonaro and Europe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we're done overall.
Yeah, I think we're approaching the end of the stream.
Yeah. The final announcement I want to make as well. It's a joke announcement, but one I want to make nonetheless, and I've wanted to do this for a while, but I haven't been able to, is interesting developments with the Bennite National Party. We've had a split. between the Benite commie nationalists because of their liberalism and because they won't get behind Tommy and other wonderful chaps. So that has led to the creation of a new political party, the Tony Defence League. Hashtag full Brexit pro exit. Hashtag free Tommy. Hashtag pro Israel.
Now,
And
I think the question is, what would be a pro EU split off? Because we have free Tommy, hashtag FUD, to keep homeless.
pan-European.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
and also the other people were not able to do their shout outs, so I'll do them for them. Angel, we've all got Twitters. Mine is at Free Thomas Williams. Cameron, yours is at Cameron Cyclist, I believe.
yeah.
And Angel's is, I think it's at Miss Annabelle Rose, but don't quote me on that. And they've got YouTube channels. Angel's got a YouTube channel. Thankfully, Bubbleverse has linked it into the chat, so go follow that one. And Matthew has his podcast, The Game is Rigged, and go subscribe to that. It's basically much like how Swiss's streams work, but they cover a lot more international news. And that's all of the showing to do.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say thank you for Thomas Williams, Matthew Cooper, and Angels for a brief appearances. So this was the alternative Sunday stream for Captain Smith, who was away today.
Yeah.
But I hope you enjoy this because it's the first time I've done stuff like this.
One final thing, as well, is about this. This was impromptu. We didn't plan this. We didn't actually know Swiss was not doing a Sunday stream until about 1:30 today. So, yeah, this isn't as professional as his is, but this was just something we did because we thought, well, there needed to be a Sunday stream. So, yeah, this is what we did. Next week, unless anything else goes on, things should be back to normal. Back on Swiss's channel. Same old Sunday stream as it is usually.
Alright. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Hopefully I'll do a stream in the week.
All right.